guys, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we're going to be doing a sewing tutorial for a holiday dress. This particular dress was my birthday dress as seen on my Instagram, but I think it would be really good for the holiday times right now. It's based on the new collection that I'm working on, so let's just get into this. Okay, first things first is material that you'll need. You'll need about 5 yards of stretch satin thread, a closed zipper that reaches about your hips, chalk or fabric markers, scissors or a rotary cutter with a cutting mat, pins, tailor's tape and ruler, sewing machine, and optional is to use a serger for all the raw edges if you have one. If not, you could just use a zigzag stitch on your regular sewing machine. I'm going to create a full tutorial soon, or you could check out others on how to create patterns based on clothing that you already have. But as you can see, I'm just using this as a measurement for a top that I already own that fits me well. So I'm going to use this, and then I'm going to overlap it with kind of like a sports bra that I have to get the plunge of the neck both front and back. Then to adjust it to the perfect size that I want, you take your breast measurement as well as your waist measurement and then divide that by quarters, because we're only cutting a quarter of the pattern, and we're going to fold the fabric in half to get the full pattern piece for the front. And then you're going to add about let's say ½ an inch of seam allowance all the way around both of those patterns. For the skirt of the dress, I am going to put a little diagram on how to do it, but basically you take your hip measurement, your total hip measurement, and then divide that by half, and then you take about 3 inches from both sides from the front and add it to the back. Right? Okay, so you'll end up with 2 rectangles, the desired length that you want and hip measurement in total, and then add maybe about 10 to 12 inches of extra fabric, because we're going to gather that fabric to make it more flowy. Obviously, the more fabric that you add to it, the more flowy and ruffled the skirt is going to be. So when you're cutting out your front piece for the top, you're going to be cutting out 2 full pieces and make sure it is on the fold so you get your front and your back attached. So you're going to need 2 pieces of that. And then for the back piece, you're going to need 4 pieces, because you're going to make sure that you do not cut on the fold for the back. Since we are going to have a zipper insert, it is better just to cut them both separately. The 2 other patterns that you are going to need that I didn't show once again was a waistband. So you'll measure the complete waist of your pattern, then add maybe about 1 inch or 2 to it, plus the seam allowance, and you're going to need 2 of those, just rectangles. And then for your wrist, you're going to need your wrist measurement. Add this one, you could add as much as you want, maybe 5 inches or 6 inches, just to get the length of it, because we're going to be able to tie it into a knot or a bow afterwards, and make sure you have 4 pieces of that. Okay, I'm not going to be able to explain this properly, so I'm going to suggest you look up a tutorial on how to make a balloon sleeve, because that is the type of sleeve that is the basis for the sleeve of this dress. Okay, that feels like it was a lot of information off the bat. Okay, recap for the patterns that you're going to need. You're going to have 2 long pieces for your skirt. Make sure when you're cutting as well, you're cutting the stretch around your body, so widthwise. So you're going to need 2 pieces for your skirt, 2 patterns for your sleeve. You're going to need 2 just long strips for your waist. You're going to need 2 front pattern block pieces, 2 front patterns. You're going to need 4 pieces for your back patterns, and you're going to need 4 pieces for your wrist cuff patterns. Bow, tie, cuff. Yeah, that thing. 4 of them. Okay, so first things first is we're going to deal with the 2 skirt pieces. We're going to create a rolled hem on the 2 sides of where the slits would be in the skirt. So a rolled hem, very quickly, is that you fold the fabric over once, and then you fold it over again, and then stitch it down. You could technically fold, stitch, and this is what a rolled hem is. It's a very nice, clean finish, and make sure that it is within the 1/2 inch that we gave within the seam allowance. And I just pressed it down because this material is very slippery and tough to work with, so I decided pressing would be a lot easier to work with the rolled hem. Next thing that I did not do, but I do suggest that you do before you gather your skirt pieces, is that you serge or zigzag stitch all of the rest of the raw hems, edges, because this material frays very, very easily. So don't be like me and not serge it. Definitely serge or zigzag stitch those raw edges sealed. Then we're going to do 2 straight stitches along the top of the, what is this called? Skirt. Of the 2 skirt blocks, and we are going to pull to gather the skirt pieces together to ruffle them. Okay, now we're going to deal with the top portion of the dress. There are a lot of little things that I wish that I did differently, so I'll tell you what I did and then what I recommend you do instead of what I did to make this even cleaner and a lot nicer and probably a lot easier. Okay, so first thing you have to do is you're going to have to take the front and back pieces, so 1 of the front block and 2 of the back pieces, and stitch the hem in between, right sides together, so good sides together, and stitch the 2 sides up, both for one of the patterns and for the other, so the front facing and for the liner. And then, like I mentioned, because this fabric frays very easily, I would zigzag or serge those pieces that you just stitched together, just to make sure that there is no fraying and the stitching won't fall apart. Okay, so now you would lay the lining and the front piece right sides together in front. What I did is I stitched basically all the openings except for the bottom waist hem piece. I do not suggest doing that. There are a couple of other ways to do it. So I would stitch the sides together and the necklines, both front and back, together. Open it up and then stitch right side to right side for the lining to lining and front to front together for the tops of the shoulder hems. I would also leave the armholes unstitched to each other. That way, when we do go to stitch it, we are able to insert the sleeve into the dress as well, again allowing that fabric to not be seen on the inside, and you just get a cleaner finish overall. Once the liner and the front facing parts are stitched together and we have attached everything else, you would want to just go in and cut some slits into the seam allowance. This will allow the fabric to fall a lot better and to move with each other, like with the curve as you fold it out, so it lays a lot flatter, so that it lays flatter. I actually did my slits beforehand and then serged everything. You could do that, or you could serge first and then do your slits, but make sure you do your slits. Okay, time to deal with the sleeve block. Now, I wanted slits on my sleeves. You could leave it like this and just have a full balloon sleeve. It's going to look very, very pretty, trust me. But for my own, I decided to do slits. So I just marked where the curve lines or points are supposed to be in the sleeve, and then marked it all the way down on both sides and just cut it. So once I cut those, I did leave a little bit extra seam allowance on both sides because I knew I was going to do this. And then we're going to do the rolling hems once again on those extra sides that you did cut, that the sleeves are not going to be placed together. Once you do a rolling hem on your new slit pieces, we are going to take the front and the back of the sleeve block and just straight stitch those together, and we are going to zigzag or serge those edges. And I would suggest also zigzagging and serging the top of the curve piece as well. Once that's done, this is where inserting the sleeve into the actual top of the dress would have been better, into the sleeve hole, instead of placing it around as I do here. So if you left that opening, then you could just insert, make sure that you flip it inside out once again, and then you're going to stitch right sides together, so know which one's your inner line, which one's your out facing, and we're going to do right sides together for the tops of the sleeve and for the outer shell of it, not the inner lining. Make sure it's wrong sides for the inner lining, and we are going to stitch that all the way around, and then you're able to flip it right side out, and you will see that your sleeve is all nice and clean inside of the bodice. As for me, you'll see I just did it the old-fashioned ways. You flip it and you do right side to right side and just stitch all the way around. Flip it over again and you'll see that it looks the way that it does. Going to work on the cuffs of the sleeves now. So as you see, I folded it in half and put my wrist there to get the half measurement and see where my wrist will fall within the center, and then we lined up the right sides together. We lined up the sleeve ends to the actual cuff, and I kind of did it half and half, so I lined up the middle pieces together and then scrunched it pretty much all the way to be within my actual sleeve length, because this is longer to tie, like I mentioned before. So once we have that all in place, we're going to put the, again, right sides together, sandwiching the two sleeve inner lining and lining with the sleeve bottom piece, and we're going to stitch that up. Again, once you stitch, either zigzag or serge all those raw edges, and we are going to stitch down the sides of the sleeve, and then you can fold it over and kind of just tuck in the raw hem of the last piece into each other. You kind of just fold it in there, and you're going to straight stitch across all the way. And that is pretty much your sleeve done. You could test it out, see, do a little bit of a tie, see if you like the length, if you want to add more fabric to it or not. You decide. Okay, the next thing that I would do is work on the waistband. So for the waistband, you're going to want to flip the top parts right side out so that you have your good sides facing, and then you're going to put good sides to good sides again with the waistband on one side, sandwiching the two front and back pieces that we did make together, and then do a straight stitch. Once again, reminder, serge or zigzag stitch all of your edges once you're done with them to prevent fraying. I would go ahead and serge and zigzag stitch the rest of the sides that you are not stitched to each other on the waistband, and then stitch the two side seams of the waistband together to each other, making sure that we do not catch the actual top part of the dress, so that we're able to also flip that inside out, or right side out technically. Okay, we're reaching the home stretch now. What I did, I believe that I didn't show, was I did a little bit of a dart in the back where I actually am going to cut down to insert the zipper. So what you're going to do is with the hemmed pieces, with the waistband, is you're going to attach your waistband to the skirt pieces. So again, if you need to line up your center, so you fold it in half and for the front and the back, and you line up your center pieces, and then you kind of just even everything out until it gets to the back where it needs to be. And then once that you line up the front and the back, pin those down, and then even it all around the skirt so that it is even all the way around. And then we're going to stitch all of that together side of the skirt, and then once that's there, we can fold over the back pieces, or the lining piece, over onto the back side, and kind of stitch in the ditch to get them all to fit together. Stitching in the ditch means you literally go over or in between where the stitch would be in the front piece. The dart that we made in the back of the skirt, I just slit down, cut the opening out, and then I attached the zipper all the way down, both front and back, to it. I also zigzag stitched that opening so that, again, no fraying is to happen. So we just stitched those together. Okay, so I just cut off the excess fabric that is at the top of the zipper, and then I just lit a little bit of a fire to melt that, as you saw, and that is it. The dress is done.
All my fault, but it's the other way.